Hi guys, I'm driving back from work and now I'm on my way to Bunnings. So I've got to pick up some paint for the leisure. And what do you call it? It's currently a lot of traffic on the Monash freeway, so roughly we'll get there within an hour. So today or this afternoon, I want to talk about learning things, right? So, a bit of context. Yesterday, I called back a mate of mine because he called me a day before yesterday, and he wanted to, catch up and figure out what I was doing because we haven't spoken for like a whole year or so. And essentially, we met maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and at the time I joined this MLM company, um, and then realized it was a like the main reason why I joined was because um, apparently they're saying, oh yeah, we teach entrepreneurship and all that, and I mainly wanted to join because I wanted to improve on my business skills, right? Because I was already doing my own things, and I wanted to, like, say for example, public speaking. I struggle in public speaking, like in person. I struggle communicating at times, and I'm improving and getting better because naturally I'm introverted. But yeah, I'm improving on that. Anyways, yeah, we met at this MLM, and then I left, and then he left as well. Essentially, he used to work as a pharmacist, but then he left that job, and then now he's looking for work, right? So essentially, we were talking, and then he said, like, because he saw some of my videos, so he wanted to ask me about like programming and all that, and then he said, oh, I started learning Python and all that, so I could get a bunch of skills on my resume to be more employable and all that. And then I asked him, why are you learning Python, right? And then because he started this course, and then essentially they're teaching Python in that course. And then I told him coding or programming software, it's not for everybody, and essentially most people quit because programming is very tedious. Like at the start, it might seem fun, but once you start getting bugs, once you start having to debug things, um, once your software gets really large and you have to step through the code, and then you get edge cases, right? Um, where you design your system or your software for a specific scenario, but you didn't take into consideration certain edge cases, and for like a small percentage of time, or like a very rare moment that happens in time, your code breaks and you don't know what happened because you thought you considered every single detail, right? So, and then, but those edge cases are, what makes software sometimes unreliable, and that's why um, development can be sometimes of a headache, right? So I told them, if you're just learning software just because you want to be employable, like, don't bother, because the thing is, for you to become employable as a software developer, you have to at least spend 6 to 12 months just learning by yourself to actually have skills that employers want you to have. And even at that point, right, you're still entry level, like you're below junior level, you're entry level, and back then it was much easier for junior developers or entry level developers to get a job because ChatGPT and AI didn't exist, right? But now companies are getting rid of their junior roles because they're replacing the low level code, or the not low level code, the basic coding, right? They're replacing that with AI, right? Before they used to replace it with offshoring the work overseas, like for example in the Philippines or India or Sri Lanka, right? But now, not even that. They just use AI. They have something like Copilot where it just generates the code and it creates scaffolding code for you. And you just have to write a prompt saying that, oh, this is the code that I want built. And then you have the backend code written up automatically, right? So you don't have to have your code monkeys to code anymore. What is valuable in software is your system architectures, your software architectures, and the ones that actually design the app, and the product owners, the ones that determine what features or what functionality features and how the app is designed. So essentially those are the type of people that are important to the company now, because once they have the high level design and the requirements, they can just use AI to generate the code and the structure of the code. And also, if a human programs the software, there's a lot of human error, right? Whereas if you use AI, then there's less likely to have human error. But AI is not perfect yet, so sometimes, like, you have this thing called hallucinations, where you didn't give AI the right prompt, and it makes assumptions, and it just generates something that you didn't ask for, right? Anyways, so I told him the way to learn coding is not by just learning random code, or because someone said so that you should learn this or you should learn that, because there's so much technology out there to learn, and if you try to learn everything, you're not going to be able to become an expert or become proficient in a specific technology, right? So I told him one of the most effective ways to learn something in software is figure out what problem you want to solve, right? Like, if you have a passion project, if you think of an idea or an app, right? Or a solution to a problem, right? Think of that first and then work your way backwards. So what I mean by that is that, for example, if you want to sell things online, right? And you're thinking, oh, how do I sell things online? Then the next question goes, oh, what do I need to be able to sell online? And you can hire someone to develop a website for you, or you can learn it yourself, and you can learn e-commerce, right? So then you would start learning Shopify, and then if you want to, or WooCommerce, right? And then if you want to customize the theme, or if you want to get into the nitty gritty, then you would learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and you learn about plugins, you learn about APIs and all that kind of stuff. But you only learn about that when you're trying to solve a specific problem that you have, right? So that's what I told him. I said, figure out a problem that you want to solve. And the thing is, I told him that when you apply for jobs, a lot of employers are going to ask you, what is the biggest problem that you solved, or what was one of the biggest problems you had, and how did you solve it, and how did you manage, say, teams, or how did you manage stress around it, or how were you able to deliver in a timely manner, right? Now, because they want to see problem solving, right? So essentially, the crux of software is basically you're solving problems, right? So you have to be a problem solver. If you're just learning code and you're not solving problems, then there's no point of learning code, right? Now, I gave him another example, and this one's a good one, because I told him that for myself, I've been developing code since I started uni, which was 2013. Yeah, 2013. So that's 13 years ago. Yeah, 13 years ago. Right. Now, basically, so I learned because my background, basically, I studied robotics and mechatronics, and a double degree. So it's robotics and mechatronics and computer science, right? And that was at Swinburne University. And I chose that field because I was like, when I was a kid, I was very curious, and I was basically fixing computers when I was a kid. So naturally, when I went to uni, when we were about to select our courses at year 12, they asked me what I wanted to do, and then I said, oh, I wanted to do some sort of like, say, engineering or like computer science or like programming or something like that. And then, yeah, I ended up choosing robotics and computer science because I thought, it's the future. Like, what do you call it? The next from that time, right? With the next 5-10 years, there's going to be a lot of jobs and all that kind of stuff, right? Now, I learned essentially throughout my time coding, and as I graduated and I worked for small companies and all that kind of stuff, I basically mainly focused, because my background was robotics, I mainly focused on low-level coding. So that was C, C++, and embedded software. Because the company I was working for before, it was a small electronics prototyping shop that we developed products for prototypes for clients. So clients would approach my boss at the time, and then they would get funding from, say, the government, or they would self-fund it, and then they would say, I have this idea, I want it implemented, here's my budget. And the project I got onto was, the client had $50,000 in government funding. But the thing is, we didn't end up finishing that project because that client ran out of government funding, because it was a very complicated automation system, right? So, what do you call it? As the years went past, people were talking about like AI and all that kind of stuff, and I'd never really touched AI, because I was like, I can still work in automation, but in the immediate setting, I don't really need to learn about using AI. And then only until recently, right, where so 3-4 years ago, I left the software industry because I got into construction after COVID, right? And then I didn't touch code, and I didn't touch AI or anything, right? Until I started doing my own jobs, because I started my own construction company. And then I realized that I needed a better system, right? So I was basically taking on different types of jobs. And the thing is, as a trainee, right, if you do the same jobs over and over again, you can pretty much ballpark a quote and say, oh yeah, I've done this before, this is my quote, and all that kind of stuff. But if you're the type of trainee that works across different trades, like if you do fencing, and then if you do concreting, and then bricklaying, and then if you have a job that involves both, or like multiple trades, right? Like if it involves carpentry, concreting, and bricklaying, or something like that, then the quoting ends up becoming more complicated, and also the access and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's a lot more consideration. So so back then, right, what you would do if you weren't sure of how to quote a certain job, but you knew how to do the job, right? Because you had some experience doing it on site, or you had someone teach you, but you didn't know exactly how to quote it because you didn't know the material prices, or you didn't know how long it would specifically take if you did both of the jobs together, right? So it would be more of a gray area than if you just did like one trade, right? So I started getting different types of jobs, and then I realized, wait, this thing called ChatGPT, or like this thing that people are talking about, like AI, and that I'm gonna see if it actually helps with figuring out some things. So I asked. So at one point, right, I was like, this coding stuff is taking me so much time, right? So I was like, one job that I got, I was like, how much does this cost, or how much should I quote for this job, right? And it said, you should quote this much per meter squared, or if if the requirements of this job is like what you say, then this is how much, like the market rate, right? But the thing is, it's not always accurate because every tradie has their own margins, and every tradie has their own quoting method. Like some tradies might quote per hour, some tradies they might quote per unit item. So, for example, for brickets, they'll quote per brick or per meter square, or so on and so forth. So there's different methods of quoting, and sometimes some tradies they switch between different types of quoting because of the nature of the job. Like if there's a lot of unknowns, then a tradie might just go, I'll just charge per hourly, and then it's not a fixed cost. The cost will keep updating, right? So essentially, like if a lot of tradies quote per hourly anyways, right, then essentially that they're saying that they don't know exactly how long it's going to take, or they don't know exactly the cost of the project. So essentially they're just guessing as well, right? So they're like, I'll quote hourly because I don't know the full ins and outs, right? So I started using AI to sort of, because a lot of my jobs were like small jobs, right? So I couldn't say, I'm gonna charge hourly, because the client would be like, how do I know you're not just gonna work really slow and then pull my leg or something, or overcharge, right? So I still had to package my prices, and sometimes when I did that, I sometimes underpriced because there was a lot of unknowns with a job, right? So when I started using ChatGPT, I was like, my quotes are actually getting more accurate, like the before and after, like as in I would quote and then I would do the job and then I'll still have a profit margin, right? And then as I kept on doing that, right, then I realized, wait, ChatGPT is just a general purpose application, right? Like it's not specifically for quoting. What if I actually create an app that does what I'm actually already doing in ChatGPT, right? And that got me thinking, if I'm about to implement this app, I have to learn about AI and the specifics of AI, right? So it was only just recently that I decided I've got to learn about AI, because I had a problem. I had a problem that I needed to solve, and then the solution, right, was AI, right? Now, yeah, so the solution was AI, and then because I figured out the problem first, I figured out how do I solve this, and then I figured out I got to use AI, and I got to figure out how to implement it, and then coincidentally enough, I got in contact with developers from the Philippines, and then next thing you know it, then we're building this app. Yeah. So, anyways, long story short, right? I tell him that I tell my mate that was asking me for advice that's the only reason why I started learning AI, not because every single person was saying, "Oh, you should get on the AI bandwagon," right? Okay, yeah, I didn't follow people's advice. I only started learning AI because it was solving the immediate problem that I had. So to sum it up, right, my advice is, if anyone wants to learn coding or even anything like the trades in general, like if you want to get into the trades because there's a shortage of tradies, and you're thinking it's a good opportunity, and you're thinking there's career opportunities, right? You have to ask yourself a question: why do you want to get into the trades, and what specifically do you want to learn? Like what do you want to solve, right? And for me, the reason why I got into bricklaying, right? Well, there was two reasons. One reason was because I wanted to become a builder, and the reason why I wanted to become a builder was because I was thinking about another product. This is different from the quoting app idea. This idea basically developed when I was working for that small electronics prototyping company, and essentially it's in the field of home automation, right? And I had the engineering skills and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't understand construction. So I realized that I need to get into construction to be able to develop this product that I want to build, right? And not just that product that I wanted to build required a lot of capital to actually get developed, so I put that on hold. But yeah, so that was one reason I got into construction, was because I wanted to learn the ins and outs. Well, not the ins and outs of construction, because there's so many things to learn about construction, but to learn enough to be dangerous about construction, so that I could combine, my robotics and computer science background with construction to implement that product that I wanted to implement. That was one reason. The second reason why I got into bricklaying specifically was because initially I actually wanted to become a carpenter. I wanted to get into carpentry. But when COVID was lifting and I was asking my mates that were running their own carpentry businesses, they said that they weren't taking any apprentices, and essentially the one who was taking apprentices was my friend from high school, and he ran his own bricklaying business, right? So, and I looked at the requirements of becoming a builder, and the two main streams that most people take to become a builder is they either go through carpentry or they either go through bricklaying, because those are structural trades, and you essentially will come across different trades if you are a bricklayer or a carpenter. And yeah, you pretty much can gather the knowledge of all like different types of trades. But for example, if you trained as a sparky, right, it's harder to become a builder from being a sparky than it is being a carpenter or a bricklayer. Though bricklaying is just hard on the money, but the thing is, when I started bricklaying, I was already going to the gym. It didn't help much because the first 6 months of me doing bricklaying, like, my body was all sore. So yeah, but anyways, you shouldn't just learn random things at random, right? You should have a specific goal that you want to reach, and then figure out, what do I need to do or know to get to that goal, right? And yeah, that's basically it. That's my, I wouldn't say rant, but that's my philosophy. Anyways, I'll catch you in the next video.